Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining. We have an informative and engaging session all about modernization for you today. Our speakers from both Soliant Consulting and AWS will share their insights and expertise on how modernizing your existing applications can help your business not only innovate, but also grow and become more resilient. Joining us today to provide practical advice on the journey to the cloud and its benefits is Adam Russ, Cloud Practice Lead from Soliant Consulting, and Dean Bryda, Application Modernization Senior Partner Development Specialist with AWS. If you have any questions during the presentation, please feel free to enter them in the chat, and we will try to get to as many as we can. We will also be asking poll questions throughout the presentation and ask that you please answer them. With that said, I'll stop here and pass it over to Dean and Adam to formally introduce themselves.
Thanks, Claudia. Just wanted to say a quick thank you to everyone for joining us here today and welcome. And I'm looking forward to what Dean has to present. And again, just thank you for being here with us. We're glad you're here. Thank you.
Thanks, Adam. Hi, everybody. My name is Dean Bryda with AWS. Thank you, Claudia, for the great introduction. We have a few slides we're going to cover today. Hopefully not too many. We'll keep it very interactive. And again, as Claudia said, please post your questions. That's the most important thing that we can do, right? We're here to make sure that we answer your questions for you, provide some insights, but more importantly, answer some inquisitive questions that you have. So with that said, we're going to get started. From an agenda standpoint, well, we already got the first one done, so I guess we're off to a good roll, right? So the introductions are complete. We're going to review really why modernization and migration and modernization is important, not only important to our customers, but also to our partners. We're going to talk about the pillars of modernization and building a strategy. We'll talk about how once that strategy is in place, how we'll scale that across the organization. And then Adam's going to provide some insights on Soliant's success and the things that they do from a partner perspective. So just to make sure that everybody's interactive and that we don't have a lot of robots attending this one, we're going to start right off with a poll question. May seem a little weird, but we're going to start right off with a poll question. So would you mind teeing that up for us,
You got
Claudia?
it. So the question we have here is, are you attending this session because you have identified a need for application modernization at your organization? We'll leave it open for about 30 seconds for folks to respond.
So it looks like everybody's awake or the robots are working pretty furiously. So we have a lot of answers coming in. So appreciate that.
Give it about 10 more seconds.
Okay.
All right. Thanks everyone for answering.
Excellent. Thank you. So it looks like we almost have a half-half type of 50-50 type of response on that question. So a lot of folks are here because they have a lot of modernization and migration type of initiatives happening. So really, I love starting with a question of why, right? So why are we here in the first place? And as Amazonians, we're taught through our culture to always ask the question why and peel back the onion as much as we can with our customers. And so as part of that process, what we try to do is uncover different types of issues and challenges our customers are having. And of course, our goal is to build great solutions that address those different types of challenges that they're having. So why not ask the question why when we start this conversation around migration and modernization? So based upon the different types of hundreds and thousands of different types of customers that we talk to, really it comes down to a common thread across the board. The majority of the time spent by our customers really is about operations and maintenance of their IT systems, and clearly enough time on innovation. And we all know that innovation is the value add in your core competency as a business owner to be able to make those strides and make those advancements in your area. Where you don't want to be spending your time is on IT systems, maintaining and keeping them up to speed. So what are some of those different types of characteristics of issues? Or what are we spending so much time on, right? Why is modernization important to me? Well, if you need to put them in a couple discrete characteristics, the easy way to look at it is from a point of view that says, if I'm spending that much time not innovating, not spending that much time on the core competency of my business, what am I spending my time on? Well, I'm spending a lot of time on probably IT infrastructure, maintenance, long release cycles, trying to roll out new products, new releases. And what does that really mean from a business standpoint? That really means that I'm losing revenue. I'm losing my flexibility to be agile, to bring new markets to bear, to new services and features to bear to my customers, which really means I'm losing and I'm degrading my competitive edge I have over my competition, right? So as all business owners are always looking over their shoulder and making sure their competition is staying far but near, so we understand what they're doing, there's always that competitive edge that we want to keep. The second point really is about where are we spending our time when it comes to lost productivity? Again, if my good people are spending more time on the IT side of the house, having to maintain these different types of infrastructure, what's that doing from not only from a resource standpoint, resource allocation, but also from a cost perspective? And what type of skill sets do I need to maintain to be able to carry that burden of that IT infrastructure or application maintenance to be able to provide those services that I need to keep my business up and running? And the third one really is about what's critical to all of us, right? If we really don't have to explain security, but the inability to support change in compliancy and security regulations. And it doesn't mean that you have to be in an industry that has security and regulation compliancy to it. All industries, all companies, all businesses have to think about security as the number one priority nowadays. And nobody wants to be on the news the next morning. So very large concern for the majority of our customers. Almost all our customers bring up security as where they're spending their dollars and where they want to see the biggest advantages in positioning for modernization in their environment. So again, what do we need to do from a customer perspective? Well, we want to be able to provide that agility and innovation to be able to deliver value to our customers. Again, success is based upon what we're delivering to our customers, not based upon how shiny our computer systems are or how good our applications are. So we want to make sure we get to market faster, and we do that through having the right automation, the right systems in place to be able to do that. Of course, IT is part of our business, but it's not the only spending business unit within our business. We want to lower the total cost of what it takes to maintain and to be able to deliver these services that are required. High performance and scalability. A very interesting point with that characteristic is most people think about performance and scalability as in to build out, right? We always hear the stories about the day of Super Bowl Sunday and how we need to grow our business because of that model and be flexible and be able to shrink back down. What most folks don't think about is really the flexibility to shrink. And right now, seeing that we're all sort of going through an economic downturn right now, and people are really cost conscious. Wouldn't it be nice if we had the IT infrastructure in place that would give us the opportunity not only to grow as we need to, but also to shrink as we need to? So providing that performance of when we need it and also that scalability when we need it, but actually make it elastic so we can move back and forth. And the last one, again, security by design. Security is day zero for us. We look at it from everywhere, from the developer writing his code all the way through to the application residing out in the environment. So a common question we hear from customers is, well, if this is all important, what does success really look like? How do we kind of benchmark ourselves? And really, there is no golden rule of how you benchmark yourself. You really have to look at your own environment, and everyone's a little bit different. But if I had to look at different characteristics of what you should be looking at in your environment as quick hits and things you should be looking at first, well, the first thing is always, how fast can I go to market? And what does that mean to me? Well, fast to market is not just simply how to release applications and services to my customers as quick as possible, but it also means what is the complete cycle that I need to do internally before I can release that service to my customers. And usually that complete cycle involves multiple different types of environments, multiple different types of developer groups, and multiple different types of systems. And so be able to provision that infrastructure to get those developers ready so they're actually productive on day one, providing the software that not only can we deploy it very quickly, but also we can incrementally update it as needed. that we can look at the security boundaries of it and understand it all the time and understand what the security boundary is and understand what the governance rules are on that. And then once that service is out in the environment, what does it look like? We all know things change, and it's not going to be the same as it was on day one. So what's their observability standpoint of that application? And how do I measure that? And how do I actually do that? And then the last one, it really talks about what is the organizational look like? What is the standards? What does the tooling look like? Do I have a consistent process? Does my organization adopt cloud native technologies? Or am I still working that legacy type of mode where everything is either start and stop and start and stop? So if looking across a customer's environment, if I can look at those different types of categories and make some judgment calls of where I think they are, we feel these are the ones that you should be looking at and really benchmark yourself against how far are you down the modernization path and where you want to be on your modernization path. So getting back to the why, right? Why is this important to me? Well, we talked about a lot of things that maybe are a little difficult to measure, quite honestly. I mean, yeah, of course, we can measure capital costs pretty quickly. And a lot of people do that very quickly when they have the move to the cloud type initiative. But how do I measure all this agility stuff? And how do I measure cost of downtime and loss of productivity and hiring skill sets and things like that? Well, there's industry leaders, our analysts, that provide different types of benchmarks, and they've really looked at modernization in a good light. So what's really compelling, and forget about the percentages and stats a little bit, but look at them from a proportion standpoint, because we know every analyst may have a different angle. And you yourself, if you look at a total cost of ownership model, you may have your own ideas of how you actually measure that. But if I'm looking at this, I'm looking at proportionally that I'm knowing that I'm decreasing drastically my incidents per year. I'm deploying much faster, and I have a 9-month payback. Now I can argue maybe it's not 9 months, maybe it's 12, or maybe it's even shorter than that. But what we're finding out is across not only our experience, but also across our analyst experience, that when people modernize, and we'll talk about the difference between migration and modernization or how those terms are being used, but when you truly modernize, that cloud native culture that you're implementing has a very quick payback. And a lot of projects that you do within IT, we all know that sometimes that payback is not in 9 months, or definitely not in the first year. Now we get to the good stuff, right? Migration and modernization. A lot of people use it as the same term. I know sometimes in every conversation, most of the time in some type of conversation, somebody throws out the word migration and modernization, and you really got to think about it for a second and go, what do they mean by that? They're not used synonymously across the board, not at least in our AWS conversations. We really think they're two really discrete different types of functions. And although they're unique, discrete functions, they can be put together. So we're not saying that there's not a purpose for both of those. But let's first of all understand that your journey or your path to modernization is a complete cloud adoption journey, very similar to how customers in the past have adopted cloud and they say they went through a full cloud adoption. Application modernization actually is a part of that cloud adoption journey. If you look all the way to the left and we start looking at different types of application portfolios, we have, of course, our legacy applications, regardless of how they're built, if they're pure monoliths sitting on virtual machines, or maybe have some on-premise container type of legacy applications, whatever it may be. Moving to cloud provides incremental value. But as you continue to go from a migrate into, in our words, a migrate is a lift and shift, it's a rehost, it's a replatform type of activity. When you go through that, you're gaining incremental value. Your level of effort went up a little bit because it takes an activity to get to cloud. It doesn't happen, overnight. Doesn't happen with a click. But at the same point, your business value went up, right? So you may have gotten away from having to manage virtual machines or manage the infrastructure as the physical infrastructure, and you moved it over to AWS, and it's sitting on EC2 today, which is great. So you leverage cloud to reduce some of the overhead and burden. But at the same point, what was the value of business that you gained from that step? Well, there was business value, but what what we like to call it is the level of business value increases as you modernize. And to us, you look at the application portfolio, you understand the application, you make good decisions, and it's not a migration step and then a modernization step to cloud native. It is a journey that you make individual decisions based upon the application portfolio that you have, and you make that decision if it's going to be a migration or a modernization. People will tell you, your partners will tell you, if you experienced in the past, I'm sure a best practice that you took away from your project, I know we've seen a lot of these, is reflecting back at the end of a project. Most customers will say, we should have taken the time to do the modernization as a single step rather than going through now that we have a bunch of applications that we simply picked them up and moved them to cloud, that now we have to try to go through the integration process. Because what we learned is our customers learn very quickly that you can't really extend to the ecosystem of systems that and services that we provide that really provide that upper business value that people are looking for. You know, our customers are not, once you get past the initial cost savings of moving to cloud, the next anticipation and what's expected is you're going to start leveraging the power of integrated services, and you're going to start leveraging the power of cloud native services. It's very difficult to do that if you simply just took something and moved it over to cloud. What we find out is the best practices, and people refer to as, they should have taken the time when they had budget, when they had people, when they had a time window to do it, to be able to actually modernize an application, put it where it should be. You can modernize and there's different ways to do that. As we see, if we move from left to right, again, the level of effort goes up, but the business value goes up. So as you take that application and maybe refactor, take pieces of it, integrate it into the cloud, integrate it into the ecosystem of services that we have, or maybe do the complete rewrite. Although again, that level of effort goes up, that business value exponentially goes up with it. And what does decrease, which is good news, nobody ever likes to hear decrease unless it's usually it's money. But what does decrease is the operational responsibility to the customer, right? So as you move more cloud native, the heavy lifting, the overhead disappears. We take on that responsibility, and hopefully you'll see that what you gain is the agility and innovation side of the house. So how do you realize that business agility? You know, we talked about what the analysts have done in the past. And we talked about how it's a little difficult to be able to measure things when it doesn't come to, say, sweating legacy costs or looking at capital costs, right? Something that's easy that a bookkeeper can do. It's hard to really measure productivity, right? It's hard to really measure. How do you measure agility? And how do you measure, well, we can measure somewhat when it comes to downtime, how much downtime would cost a business, but that sometimes is hard to do too. But we have ways to do that. There's calculators to do that. We have methodologies to follow. Our partners, Soliant, has methodologies to follow. You really need to take a look at it, because especially now in these times when we hear the majority from all our customers right now is, I can justify a project to my management. I can justify as long as I show what the value is to the business, and it needs to be tangible value. It's easy to say I'm going to save a percentage off the bottom line. It's hard to say I'm going to save a percentage of agility or innovation. But we have ways that we can demonstrate through a business model. Obviously, today is not the day to talk about complete business models, but we have ways that we can walk you through that justify what a modernization project really means and how you can bring that to management and what the real value add is. So what we're talking about here is not a lot of smoke and mirrors. We do have how we progress from left to right. As you can see very simply from the slide, it's that boomerang action that we're really interested in, right? As we go from left to right, as we go from the standard lift and shift, and we go from simply taking workloads and moving them to someplace different, when we start modernizing using cloud native technologies, we start gaining all those efficiencies that we love to see, which is around agility, innovation, and reducing cost. All right. That gives me a chance to take a sip of water. Why don't we have another
We do.
question?
I will go ahead and launch that. And our second poll question is, which of these drivers are most important to your business? And we are going to, sorry, give me one moment. There we go. We'll give everyone about 30 to 45 seconds to respond. All right. Thanks, everyone.
And the drum roll is replacing legacy infrastructure, business agility ranks very high. That's great. What's surprising is cost optimization is a little bit lower than expected. A lot of times you hear a lot of people just talk about cost optimization as a reason why. So it's good to know that there's a lot of value add and people recognize the value add of modernization outside of just cost. Alrighty. So let's talk about the pillars of modernization. So now we get into a lot of the fun stuff, right? So a lot of people ask, well, that's great. You talked about modernization and why we should do it, but actually, how do we do it? It's because it really is, it's cultural, this whole modernization transformation. Like any transformation project that you go through, they're not easy to do. But we think there's three key pillars that you should be looking at. And it really comes down to the basics, I hate to say, or that's actually good news, but it comes down to people, it comes down to process and automation, and it comes down to technology. And so let's dive right into it and let's talk about people. Some people will say the people part of modernization is the hardest part. And anybody's gone through any type of very large organizational structure change, they can relate to that comment. Our experience is that if you look at cloud native cultures and trying to change it in a customer's environment, you really need to start at the organizational level. And we'll dig a little bit deeper into the organizational level, but very simply, if the way to look at it is the way you're organized is usually the way that people work. So, and that could be a good and a bad thing. Historically, very large organizations, those ones with the really large umbrellas, right, that start out and they span very wide to a point that you can't even see everybody on one page of a slide deck, right? That org chart is so wide, it takes two. Those type of structures work pretty hard when it comes to cloud native. And only the reason is that they're usually structured around very specific stovepipe type of activities and not functional activities. And as we know in IT now, that the functional structure is the most important part. And if our organization structure is geared around a certain business unit, such as, well, I'm not going to throw out any names, but say it's business unit type specific structures, it's very hard for those business units to work with other business units. So therefore, you kind of lose that functional type of structure and the way to work. And so what we see is if you're organized in a legacy environment, it's very hard to move to cloud native. And so we have a suggestion on how to kind of change that organizational structure, even though you don't have to go through a full reorganization on that. But if you think of it as if you were more aligned to a functional standpoint, and you're probably asking, well, why are we talking about microservices now? I just thought we were just talking about people a second ago. Well, they're kind of related in a way, if you look at it conceptually, right? For the folks who love to get very granular and technical, they know what microservices are. A microservice is one of the key components of modernization, and they serve a purpose. Microservices are pretty much the smallest element of functionality in theory, right? Of reusable functionality that you can have, that they're loosely coupled together. They work together, but they're loosely coupled and they work independently. And they provide a lot of great strengths that you don't get from when you build something that's all connected and very large in nature. You get the ability to be able to change very quickly very small units of the application without really taking the application down. So you can make incremental change very easily. And without all those codependencies, you can get a lot of work done. You get a lot of things done. There's a lot of agility there. So let's use that same type of logic back in our organizational structure. And the way we look at it, it's called a two pizza team. And if you read anything about Amazon, you're probably well aware of what two pizza teams are. But if you haven't, it's a pretty easy concept. I love the idea. It comes down to pizza, by the way. It's one of my favorite foods. But the organization structure of what you're working on should be really no more people than can be fed by two pizzas. Now, to me, that would be two people because I could eat a full pizza by myself. But if you think about it from a theory standpoint, right, a large pizza usually feeds between 4 to 5 people. If you have 2 of them, you're talking about 8 to 10 people, 12. I guess the actual number is really not that important, but you understand the concept, right? So it's small, decentralized teams, very similar to that microservice, right? That microservice works very independently. It's very small. It's one of the smallest factors of functionality. That's how we want to build our teams, make them very nimble. You notice the pizza team hasn't been divided by any type of organizational structure. It's functional. These people come together. They bring their specific skill sets. We're minimizing a whole social constraint that we just talked about a second ago. And the autonomy is all about really making decisions, right? This pizza team can make its own decisions. It can move very quickly. That's the whole concept of the DevOps culture, the whole cloud native culture. And we work independently. And in our case, at least, we work very much in an independent startup type of philosophy where these pizza teams can pretty much do anything they want. Now, we know that that's probably not going to be true for every single business and may not be true for your business. But if you just use the concept of small, nimble teams that are functionally aligned, not organizationally aligned, I think you're off to a really good start. Alrighty, so let's move away from the people part of it for a second. Let's move to something, maybe it's a little bit more easier, and that's the process side of it. The process side is really easy. Automate, 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 automate. That's the whole concept, right? And that's what we think we bring to cloud for people. We have a ton of different services that allow us to automate and to enable self-service at scale. And I don't have to read the technologies off to you. And for the folks who are very familiar with AWS, you may use almost all these systems, different types of services today. But across the board, across the life cycle of the application, there should be different processes that have automation built into them. And we're going to talk a second about the difference between automation and guardrails and toll gates and things like that. But basically, it's all about, do you have the tools and the processes in place to make sure that you have a streamlined process? And that streamlined process, think about the weakest link in any chain is that link that's the weakest, right? So the chain strength is based upon the strength of all the links put together, not just a single one. So if you have a very weak link, in this case, maybe provisioning orchestrates the weak link, the whole chain, the whole life cycle of that application is going to be weak. And so it's important to look across the spectrum of everything that you do and understand how you're resolving each one of those, or what is your plan to resolve or automate that process. Technology. Probably the reason why you came in the first place, right? Everybody gravitates to the technology side. I love the technology side, but as we just reviewed, it's only a piece of the puzzle. It's only one of the pillars, but let's talk about the technology. So the famous saying, I'm sure you heard this 1,000 times before, you want to build apps, not infrastructure. You want to do more with less. You want to make the whole developer experience very seamless and transparent. How do we really do that? Well, there's a couple different ways that we do that, but it really does start on your application portfolio. If anybody comes in and tells you this is the way you're gonna change your application portfolio across 100% of your apps, of course that's crazy. Nothing's 100%, and nothing even leans to 80%. But what we can tell you is that application portfolio assessments are probably one of the most important things you can do. As the saying goes, you want to measure 3 times and cut once. So that saying goes, very similar to how you manage an assessment. You want to assess, and then you want to execute, right? Nothing better than a good plan. And what we find out too is, surprising enough, a lot of your applications can be retired, or they should have a plan for retirement. So it's not always about migrating or modernizing your applications. It's really about making good decisions on the application suite that you have, understanding how they're being used, and understanding what your other alternatives may be, and then what the plan is going to be for that application itself. We love to think that everything you do will move to serverless, to Lambda serverless, right? The least of the infrastructure overhead that you can have. That's cloud native, almost utopia, right? But we know that's not reality for all your application suites. It may make sense to move things in a lift and shift environment. It may make sense to re-platform, say, maybe to containers due to the use case that it's in, or containers as a long-term, because we know the value of containers and what that does too. But regardless, there's the common approach to all these really is understanding your application suite, making good decisions, and putting together a consistent model across your infrastructure and making that very automated and seamless to your developers. Here we go. Let AWS do the heavy lifting. We have a ton of different services. How many, the total number, I don't know. Don't ask me. There's a ton of them. I can't keep up on that type of stuff. But I can tell you that regardless of what the integration is that you're looking at, whatever your use case is, I'm sure we have something that kind of points in that direction to it. I can tell you from the most obvious standpoint, when you're looking at cloud native technologies, as you can see, as the diagram clearly shows, you can do more and you want to go all the way to the right to less. Lambda functions is pretty much, hey, your developer writes code, it executes. What happens behind the scene, behind the black curtain, is handled behind the black curtain. Nobody really knows. But the service is executed and run, and there's no infrastructure heavy lift for you to maintain. There's really little for you to maintain, actually, when it comes to that. But again, across all our different services, it could be from the compute side, the database side, or the analytics side. We have a ton of different services that takes that heavy lifting, that burden off of you, and makes it more cloud native, which makes all your integrations much easier too, if you think about it. Poll question.
Yes. The next poll question we have is, which AWS service is most critical to your business? We're going to go ahead and share that now. We'll give everyone about 30 seconds. I'm sorry, what was that, Dean?
I said this will be interesting.
Agreed.
It's almost like watching a horse race. You want to go, and we have you out in front. He's got 2 lengths ahead. Oh, easy, Fargate. No, Lamba's coming up. Lambda. Oh. We have an upset coming here. The upset is unsure and EC2, maybe.
I think so.
We have unsure coming in as the upset of the day.
Thanks to everyone for answering. Appreciate it.
I live up by Saratoga Flat Track. Saratoga, New York. Horses. That's where that humor comes from. Scaling modernization. So scaling, I think, is the I would say the most important, but I think it's the most entertaining. I love when we get to a scaling motion, because that means you've proved out a lot of different types of tactics and techniques. You have an idea of where you want to move, but you really want to get it to a much bigger emphasis, bigger scale. You want to move it across the enterprise. So you started small with those little pizza teams, and now you're at a point that you want to make this clear direction open to everybody in the organization. So talking about 6 steps here, we could probably add 10 more to it, but to make it very simple, I think one of the most important things you can do, I have some past experience where I've actually gone through and went from a brownfield environment, very structured, as I mentioned before, very structured organization. And I went into converted a complete engineering team, a global engineering team, to cloud native. One of the first things that we did, we established a cloud center of excellence. Probably one of the most important things you can do. And I say that only from a point of view that it allows you to put a structure and put a visual entity to what you're about to do, and provide some type of governance and control board. We'll talk about down the road a little bit when you do scale out what happens to that cloud center of excellence. But what you're trying to do at this point is you're trying to get all your stakeholders together. You're getting all your representation across your organization. You're creating a board that you can come to a common level mindset to. Setting those standards, setting those objectives are understanding from all the stakeholders what they're bringing to the table and what their expected outcomes are. Quick wins. When you start with any type of transformation, right? Of course, you want to tackle the hardest problem that you have in your organization. You probably don't want to do that though. What you're looking for is to gain momentum, gain positivity, gain success. To do that, you want to find yourself something that's important to everybody, but at the same time, something that it's 100% attainable. You know, if you work hard, you can get it. And you want to be able to get that quick win because you want to be able to turn around and communicate to people why you're doing this and show your results of how you got that done. You want that quick win to show that quick result. You want to bring in your leadership support. Of course, stakeholders in any type of project is very important, but you want to make sure that your leadership support is bringing their opinions, their observations, and what their desired outcomes are. And that's being built into your CCOE. So you want to establish that clear vision from your leadership. So you know when you have those quick wins, and as you progress down your cloud native journey and you continuously have good wins, that you're showing positive results back and your leadership's there to be able to support you. And when you don't have a quick win and when you have a little bump in the road, and we like to call those lessons learned and pivot, when you have those, you still have leadership to support you during that activity. Best practices, there's a ton of information. We offer a ton of information from AWS, everything from technology to implementation to reference architectures to reusable infrastructure as code templates. We have a ton of stuff. I think we have so much stuff that people don't understand how much content we actually have. But this is where you can rely on your AWS team, rely on your partners. Soliant, rely on partners that you trust, partners like Soliant that can come in. They have the expertise. They can show you what it takes to be successful, and they've gone through and seen what isn't successful. Have gone through some of those bumps in the road. Use their lessons learned. Use them to get through that project. Evangelize. Communication is key. People will fear cloud native and transformation projects. I should say transformation in general, right? If you've been through a transformation project at any scale, you know that it's change. It's scary. People don't like scary things. They don't like change. They like things that are very repetitive and common, and they feel nurtured. So you need to evangelize, and you want to evangelize to a point that you're showing people this is a positive thing. Look at the stakeholders we have on board who also feel it's a positive thing. Look at our quick wins, the good things that we're doing. Look how this is benefiting the business. Make it to a point that if they're not included in your project, that they feel they're left out of something. So that's how far you should evangelize. And then probably the last one is really, once you have some successes and you've created that community of cloud nativeness, that culture, think about how you're going to reorganize in it. The CCOE is, I think, a function that should stay around it to some place, but a lot of folks have taken it to, maybe we can learn from the first 5 steps to reapply a different organizational structure, or maybe the CCOE or some type of entity body should be decentralized and move across the organization. So there's lots of different ways, but basically reorganize is really look at what you've done in the past, evaluate, and then pivot if you need to be more successful. And we talked about forming a team a little bit. You really do need to pick the right people, especially when you're forming a cloud native culture. Don't pick the person who doesn't like change, who likes to come in every single day and look at the same screen and check the boxes and go home that night. I'm not trying to stereotype anybody, but I think we've all worked in environments where there's people that endorse collaboration. They like change. They like things that are moving in a positive direction, and they're not afraid to learn something new. And then we have other folks who just don't feel comfortable doing that. Don't form your team with people who don't want to do things differently. it's an obvious thing, but a lot of people include members because maybe they have a skill set that they can't get by without, or maybe politically they need to include somebody in their team because they're the right person they should have on it. Try not to, because what you'll find out is you want a bunch of positive people with change culture that's running through their bloodstream to be able to make you successful. And so picking the people really is really key and important. Very similar to how we pick our leadership people too. You want to pick the right leaders who endorse change, who have felt some pain points. They feel comfortable that you're the change agent within the organization that can make things happen. Pick the right leaders that are going to move your project forward with you and will support you, because not everything's going to go the right way the first time. You're going to need somebody who's going to support you in the bad times and with the good times. We already talked about the quick wins. I'm not going to talk about too much on those, but avoid the one-offs and the really weird stuff, thinking that you're just going to get it out of the way. Pick something that you think you really can make a change to, that's important, that you can really communicate and socialize and evangelize out to everybody. And also that you can measure too. Nothing's really important unless you can measure it. Iterate, iterate, iterate. I mean, that's the agile framework, right? I mean, this is cloud native. It's the core culture of what we do. You want to iterate. Iterate and, as the saying says too, fail fast, pivot, move forward type of thing. Lessons, learn from what you failed, move forward. So with all those different types of things, this goes back to the best practices. We have a ton of best practices that you can follow. So hopefully we will decrease the percentage of times that you fail, but hopefully you will fail, because that's the way you're going to learn. So fail quick, pivot, move on, keep moving forward. Keep your cloud native evangelism moving forward. It's important. We already talked about leadership support, how important it is to pick the right people. Alrighty. I think the hook is coming out and my time is almost up, and I'm going to hand it over to Adam soon. But if I can ask you to take 3 things away from the conversation that we had, it's really about migration and modernization is not the same thing, and it is a journey. It's not a project. It doesn't have a start date and an end date. It's a complete journey. So please treat it like a journey. If you treat it like a journey in the beginning, you'll be more successful. And think about those 3 pillars. You may not be able to address all 3 pillars at the same time. You may have an obstacle with 1 or 2 of them, but look at the 3 pillars, see how you can address each one of those, and make a plan based on those. And, and don't do it alone. You have AWS people, you have AWS customer account teams that can help you, AWS professional services. We have AWS, all the best practices that we publish. And we have great partners. And I'm going to let a great partner, I'm teeing Adam up to take you through just a couple more content slides to talk about the good stuff that Soliant does and how you should leverage Soliant.
Thanks a lot, Dean. I wanted to say a big thank you to Dean and Claudia and Maria for making this possible with us and collaborating with us on this. We're very excited to be able to work with them and AWS on our journey to the cloud. But before I move forward, I'd like to throw a poll up here real quick in regards to if you all feel this content is helpful or if it's something that you'd like to see in the future from us.
You got it.
Claudia, if you don't mind throwing that up there, and then I'll just keep talking. Folks, yeah, that's great. Folks can answer that. It'll just help us understand whether or not we can focus our efforts and provide valuable feedback like this or valuable content based on your feedback in the future. So thank you very much. I want to talk to you today in these last remaining minutes that we have about why we feel that Soliant Consulting is uniquely positioned to help our SMB clients achieve some success with cloud migrations and application modernizations. And since 2004, Soliant has been working with a wide spectrum of clients, anywhere from SMB all the way up to enterprise and everywhere in between. But we really feel like SMB is our sweet spot. We know the challenges that they face. We're able to work with them collaboratively to solve problems and really can understand the challenges that they face because we are an SMB as well. So we kind of feel like we understand where they're coming from and where they're trying to go. And so we feel like our shared experience between us and our clients really matters. Also, we feel like having a legacy background is also extraordinarily valuable when we are working with SMBs. So understanding, the legacy of our clients, where they've come from, where they're trying to go, where they're currently at, and also coupling that with our legacy of our history and the things that we've learned along the way. We really feel like that is very important and extremely valuable in our interactions with our clients. With all of the things that we do and the things that we are as a service provider, we're not a product vendor. I want to make that very clear. We're not trying to push any particular product onto our clients. We're a consulting vendor that has a plethora of technologies that's available to us, and AWS in particular is a great tool in our tool belt. But we don't have a bias when we go towards an engagement with a client. We don't have a specific collection of pre-built vertical services that we're trying to sell to people. We're trying to sell them results and achieve collaborative results with them. So I think that's really key and something that we're really proud of, being able to engage with our clients on the basis of legacy and understanding where they're at, where they're trying to get to. In the past 5 years, Soliant has launched out on a journey with AWS, and we're privileged to be an AWS partner for advanced tier services. There's a lot of fantastic partners out there. We understand that. There's a lot of choices that people have when they're choosing a partner, but we're very happy to be an advanced tier partner, and we're committed to doing even more in the future as it pertains to our investment in the cloud and what we can offer to SMBs when it comes to these areas of application modernization and migrations to the cloud. So we are an Immersion Day partner. We're part of the solutions provider program and also the AWS CloudFormation delivery program. So these are some of our investments, just a couple of our investments that we've put into our practice at AWS, and something that we're really proud of. We are also on the AWS marketplace, and you can find us there if you're looking for information about some of our services. We've worked so far just within the AWS space in these last 5 years, over 400 clients that we've had successful engagements with. And we're hoping to do even more in the future and really build upon our success there. We've invested in our people considerably. We've got over 40 AWS certifications within our ranks. So going from business accreditations, technical accreditations, all the way up to specialty certifications like networking or our solutions architect, professional, and associates type folks. So we're really investing in this, and we're very much invested in being able to provide quality services to our customers. We understand that when we're working with SMBs, the majority of our customers do not do a full migration to start. And I want to make it very clear that we view much of this as multiple steps over time. We will make sure that we've got a good vision of where our clients are at, what their challenges are, and we try to develop an iterative roadmap for success for them so that we can get them in, get them a quick win, and make sure that we've got space for them to grow in the future. So we understand that methodologies grow over time, and we want to make sure that we accommodate that in an effective way. We've got the perspective for that. We want to make sure that we're keeping that in mind with our customers, that we're trying to take them on a journey. We're not trying to jump in 100% at the beginning. We find that that's not necessarily where our success usually lies. We are usually successful just getting that light step in, providing value, and kind of showing the way there. So we leverage your legacy, as I mentioned before. We try to leverage the past in regards to what our clients are good at, what their applications do well for them. And then we learn how we can supplement cloud technologies in there and really fit a great solution in with cloud technologies using AWS. And we found that's very successful for our clients. One thing that we really try to focus on is the 7 R's for our cloud engagements. And I'd like to take this time to offer an ebook. We've put an ebook together, and Claudia will drop that in there. It'll show there up, I believe, on the bottom left-hand side of your screen there. If you'd like to take a little bit more time to learn more in depth about some of these things that we're talking about. So these are the 7 R's as it pertains to what we're doing here. So rehost, refactor, replatform, repurchase, relocate, retire, and retain. But we really try to focus on 3 of these for the most part: rehost, refactor, and replatform. So the example that I can give is, in a case where your applications are working great for you, maybe you're facing some issues with hardware, that a rehost would fit that bill, to where we don't have to make any changes to your existing applications, but we can provide you incredible value by being able to just simply rehost that in a reliable infrastructure. Or if we're refactoring, if we're taking something that needs some enhancement, it works, it's got a good core to it, but we're able to go in and supplement it with cloud technologies. That's a refactor, or maybe a mix of both, where we go in and re-platform things and do kind of a mix of both of those. So I'd encourage you to grab that ebook if you'd like to read a little bit more about that. It'll hopefully be an asset to you. So we're happy to provide that. I'd like to present just a few examples of the work that we've done for our clients recently. And we've got some time constraints today, so we won't go super in depth, but I'd like to give you at least a glimpse and a sampling of some of the recent work that we've done. And these are good examples, calling back to those 7 R's, or in this case, the 3 R's that we're dealing with. Vanguard Cleaning Systems of Portland had a legacy application that was experiencing some fragility as it pertained to hardware, and they didn't really want to go in and make that expenditure, and they had some other issues with the software that they wanted to solve. Their office team of around 12 employees would frequently be unable to use this core business application, which scheduled and processed appointments and service requests from their customers. They relied on a tape backup system in this case that they would need to utilize for disaster recovery as a result of their servers crashing. Frequently, those would have to be rebuilt. This resulted in downtimes often of up to a day or more. So pretty significant for them, and something that impacted them greatly. So what we did in this case, we did a roadmap with Vanguard, which resulted in a project that included a new EC2 server that we rehosted their application workload to, along with a file server component that allowed them to access and share their corporate documents and application dependency across their organization. And then on the backup side, EC2 snapshots took the place of their old tape backup system, and this resulted in their ability to theoretically restore from backup in 15 minutes or less, which reduced that day or more of downtime significantly that they were experiencing previously. I would point out that they haven't had to rely on this yet. So far, things have been extremely stable, and they've gone from having this fragility and their service crashing frequently to being very stable, and they haven't had to rely on their backups. We're monitoring that for them and taking care of that for them on the back end. Also, another piece of this that we implemented for them was a VDI solution using Amazon Workspaces, which included AD services and group policies that supported different components that we implemented there. So that gave their employees a virtual workspace to work on and access all of those service within the VPC there in the cloud. So overall, this was a pretty straightforward project, but this demonstrates what I'm talking about when it pertains to rehosting. We were able to do a rehost or a lift and shift that moved their application to the cloud very quickly, and without making any changes to their core software, was able to give them some success getting into the cloud there. The second example I'll bring you to is Ellis Coffee. Ellis Coffee is a great customer of ours. They're a coffee roaster that's based in Philadelphia. And they came to us because they're looking for a partner who could help them rethink their legacy web portal that was based largely on on-premise accounting software. So their partners are in the hospitality industry, such as hotels and things like that, who would submit regular orders for coffee beans on their existing website. Then they had a van route in the area that would fulfill those orders. They wanted to make some enhancements to their site, but it really wasn't going to work out so great because it wasn't forward compatible. And the application relied on some web scripting that was pretty tightly coupled to their legacy accounting software. So in this case, we performed a refactor of that site. And so what we did was we moved the legacy process into a cloud native structure that's decoupled from that legacy accounting software. And we were able to work with their legacy application programmer to refactor and rewrite how that data exchange worked. So we moved that portion over to an RDS database in the cloud, so that their React front end now relies on admin APIs that are totally decoupled and pointing back to that accounting piece. But the benefit here is that if there's an ISP connection issue, or if they have a hardware issue, there's no dependencies there, and their website can continue to function, and they're achieving some great efficiencies and stability in the cloud as a result of that. Also, another great thing about this is that if they decide ever to move away from that legacy accounting piece, they'll be able to do so because it's extremely forward compatible. That was a really key part. They also wanted to add in the future some self-service shipping and online payments in the future. But what we advised in this case was that they wait on that. Let's get their infrastructure stabilized first before we make any other major changes. But I also heard that we're about to tackle those shipping and payment aspects here soon in a new phase of work. So that's a great example of when we're talking about a refactor, which allows them to modernize more in the future, but to get that stability quickly and get things shaped up for the future. So this was a great project for us. And then third, Art is Love, which is formerly Calisher. They create and commission original art pieces for spaces all over the world. They're a longtime customer of ours. And as their customer base expanded, their team approached us with a unique hosting and functionality need for their business. What we ended up developing was Art Lab, which is a web application that we rewrote for them that includes a sophisticated search function across a library of images. So previously they were on WordPress, a WordPress type of a site that presented issues, not in the least of which was how it handled those images. So it didn't really handle those well. So we were able to move their image library over to S3, which was a huge factor because when an image is uploaded into S3, it automatically triggers the creation of several thumbnails, runs different processes, and extracts keywords from the art using Textract, which is another AWS service. From that, we create an Elasticsearch catalog, and that produces a corpus of search terms, along with which their librarian is also able to enter in keywords and deal with that as well. So we moved them over from a full stack server-based infrastructure to something that's now serverless and cloud native. It also utilizes CloudFront, so that gives them great performance across performance and reliability really across all regions instead of being limited to that traditional architecture. This solved their issues nicely for them and also sets them up for new improvements that we're actually starting on very soon for them as well. So it was a great example of a little bit of both of those R's that we talked about. And then the last example I'll give you today about some of the work that we do for our clients is about our MSP platform, Soliant.cloud. It provides that light step into the cloud for our customers where we can help them manage, build, or develop production systems that we help manage and support within our MSP. And we've got some pretty specific, we have some specific products that are a great fit for our MSP, such as Claris FileMaker. Many of you who are on this call may be familiar with that. We're a platinum member of Claris, with Claris, which is an Apple subsidiary, but we're able to leverage AWS to provide what we believe is a world-class leader in FileMaker hosting that no other vendor is able to offer. Because within this MSP, we were able to leverage AWS services that support other services, such as our OptiFlex family of products that really accentuates and supports the cost optimization and sustainability pillars of the AWS well-architected framework. So it really gives us that competitive edge to be able to provide great service to our clients in an MSP type of an environment. So those are just a few examples of how we feel like we're uniquely positioned to help our SMB customers achieve that success. And I know we kind of sped through it, but we're trying to solve deep and complex problems while still providing flexibility, cost efficiency, and really a path forward to the future. With that, we're going to include a link at the bottom here for you to, if you have questions, if there's a particular question that you have that you'd like to get answered, or you'd like to find more details about maybe some examples of things that we've worked on in the past, or if you'd like to receive a free consultation for your journey to the cloud, we'd be more than happy and delighted to be in contact with you. So utilize that if you can. And also our direct contact information, my direct contact information is listed there, as well as our general information line. So thank you so much to everybody who joined us today. Thank you again to Claudia and Dean and Maria. and also the folks.
Thank you.
behind the scenes for
Thanks again,
Soliant as
Adam
well.
and Dean,
So
for
with
presenting
that, I'll
today.
hand
And
it
thank
back
you
to
all for
Bryda.
attending.
Thank you.
If you, again, are interested in next steps, as Adam mentioned, please hit the Speak with an AWS, with our AWS team in the lower left-hand corner of your screen, and complete the requested fields. We look forward to connecting with you all sometime in the future again. This concludes our call, and thanks, and have a great day.